The complete works of Swami Vivekananda. Lecture delivered by Swamiji in Jaffna in 1897, Part 3. What makes creation God? What do I mean by the use of the word God? Certainly not as ordinarily used in English. A good deal of difference. There is no other suitable word in English. I would rather confine myself to Sanskrit word Brahman. He is the general cause of all these manifestations. What is Brahman? He is eternal, eternally pure, eternally awake, the Almighty, the All-Knowing, the All-Merciful, the Omnipresent, the Formless, the Partless. He creates this universe. If he is always creating and holding up this universe, two difficulties arise. We see that there is partiality in the universe. One person is born happy and another unhappy. One is rich and another poor. This shows partiality. Then there is cruelty also. For here, the very condition of life and is death. One animal tears another to pieces, and every man tries to get the better of his own brother. This competition, cruelty, horror, and sighs rendering heart day and night in the state of things in the world of ours. If this be the creation of a God, that God is worse than cruel, worse than any devil that man ever imagined. Says the Vedanta, it is not the fault of God that this partiality exists, that is this competition exists. Who makes it? We ourselves. There is a cloud shedding its rain on all fields alike, but it is only the field that is well cultivated which gets the advantage of the shower. Another field which has not been tilled or taken care of cannot get that advantage. It is not the fault of the cloud. The mercy of God is eternal and unchangeable. It is we that make the differentiation. But how can this difference of some being born happy and some unhappy be explained? They do nothing to make out that differences. Not in this life, but they did in their last birth, and the difference is explained by this action in the previous life. We now come to the second principle on which we all agree, not only all Hindus, but all Buddhists and all Jains. We all agree that life is eternal. It is not that it has sprung out of nothing, for that cannot be. Such a life would not be worth living. Everything that has a beginning in time must end in time. Of life began just but yesterday, it must end tomorrow, and annihilation is the result. Life must have been existing. It does not now require much acumen to see that. It does not require much acumen to see that, for all the sciences of modern times have been coming round to our help, illustrating from the material world the principles embodied in our scriptures. You know it already that each one of us is the effect of the infinite past. The child is ushered into the world not as something flashing from the hands of nature, as poets delight so much to depict, but he has the burden of the infinite past. For good or evil, he comes to work out his own past deeds. That makes the differentiation. This is the law of karma. Each one of us is the maker of his own fate. This law knocks on the head at once all the doctrines of predestination and fate, and gives us the only means of reconciliation between God and man. We and none else are responsible for what we suffer. We are the effects and we are the causes. We are free therefore. If I am unhappy, it has been of my own making. And that very thing shows that I can be happy if I will. If I am impure, that is also my own making. And that is very thing shows that I can be pure if I will. The human will stands beyond all circumstance. Before it, the strong, gigantic, infinite will and the freedom in man, all the powers even of nature must go down, succumb and become its servants. This is the result of the law of karma. The next question, of course, naturally would be, what is soul? We cannot understand God in our scriptures without knowing the soul. There have been attempts in India and outside of India too to get a glimpse of the beyond by studying external nature. And we all know what an awful failure has been the result. Instead of giving us a glimpse of the beyond, the more we study the material world, the more we tend to become materialized. The more we handle the material world, even the little spirituality which we possessed before vanishes. Therefore, that is not the way to spirituality, to knowledge of the highest, but it must come through the heart, through the human soul. The external workings do not teach us anything about the beyond, about the infinite. It is only the internal that can do so. Through soul, therefore, the analysis of the human soul alone, can we understand God. There are differences of opinion as to the nature of the human soul among the various sects in India. But there are certain points of agreement. We all agree that souls are without beginning and without end, and immortal by their very nature. Also that all powers, blessing, purity, omnipresence, omniscience are buried in each soul. That is a grand idea we ought to remember. In every man and in every animal, however weak or wicked, great or small, resides some omnipresent, omniscient soul. The difference is not in the soul, but in the manifestation. Between me and the smallest animal, the differentiation is only in manifestation. But as a principle, he is the same as I am. He is my brother. He is the same soul as I have. This is the greatest principle that India preached. The talk of the brotherhood of man becomes in India the brotherhood of universal life, of animals and of all life down to the little ants. All these are our bodies. Even as our scripture says, thus the sage, knowing that the same Lord inhabits all bodies, will worship every body as such. That is why in India there have been such merciful ideas about the poor, about animals, about everybody and everything else. This is one of the common grounds about our ideas of the soul.